In this week's episode of One Piece, major revelations are revealed about the cruel and disturbing backstory of Don Quixote Doflamingo. We also get to learn the real truth behind Trafalgar Law's real name, and Corazon finally breaks the silence. Before I go further into my review, massive spoiler warning. If you have not watched this week's episode, there is a big spoiler in this week's episode, which is all about Trafalgar Law and what his real lineage is linked to. Trafalgar Law's real name is Trafalgar D. Water Law. That's right, Trafalgar Law is a D. The will of D lives on in his family, and that's a pretty big deal. In fact, when you learn this, he actually kind of does look a little bit like Luffy. I'm not saying they're related or anything, but a lot of these guys that have D in their name do have to have some certain similarities. Not always exactly in what they look like, but a lot in their personality and what they're actually trying to do. You know, they're guys who are really shaking up the world and doing some nutty things. And this week's episode was pretty freaking insane. It was also handled really well, and it's one of those episodes that by the time it was done and we hit that to be continued screen, my jaw was on the floor. I was just enamored the entire time. The Doflamingo backstory is disturbing and messed up. We really get to see how it all went down, how his father, Don Quixote Homing, actually left the Celestial Dragons so that they could live a normal life like normal people. The problem is, normal people don't want them around. They're so pissed off at the Celestial Dragons, in fact, that they hunt down his family over the course of a couple years, hang them up, and torture them. In fact, the opening scene where they're talking about all of the awful things that the Celestial Dragons have done to them and their family is downright disturbing, because these people are so angry, and yet they're so distraught and sad at the same time. They're angry, and tears are running down their face. It's a really effective scene. And over the course of a couple years, Don Quixote Homing and his family try to run away from all these people trying to kill them, and little by little you can see that Doflamingo is getting more and more angry with his father, and sort of plotting his revenge against him, and sort of realizing that he's the reason why everything is so messed up right now, and he doesn't want to let go of his Celestial Dragon heritage. So much so that if people just walk in front of him, he gets pissed off and demands a pistol. Aside from that, some of the other big elements about this week's episode is that Trafalgar Law is now an official member of the Don Quixote crime family, and we go through this huge montage sequence of him training with the various members, and I love montage sequences. Just insert any 80s song, and it works. And surprisingly enough, Corazon just kept his mouth shut all about Trafalgar Law actually hurting him, but that's when you learn at the very end of the episode that he actually does have an ulterior motive. In fact, by the end of the episode, Corazon, or as he's really known, Don Quixote Rocinante, actually overhears Trafalgar Law saying that he actually has the D in his name. He pulls him aside into an alley, and he finally talks for the very first time, telling him to get away from Doflamingo, giving us our classic to be continued screen. I just want to mention that the Japanese voice actor for Rocinante happens to be the same voice actor who voiced Spike Spiegel in Cowboy Bebop, and is also currently voicing Beerus, the God of Destruction, in Dragon Ball Super, and that's pretty freaking awesome. But one of my favorite things about this week's episode is something that was very subtle. It was these weird little transitions that they were doing through the course of the episode, where there was a black screen, and little by little you would see these white splotches start to appear and get larger and larger. This was literally like the white lead disease, which is taking over Trafalgar Law's body, and it just amplified the tension as the episode was going on. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of One Piece? This was a really great backstory yet again that is really tragic and really disturbing, and it's sort of like the other side of the coin to Trafalgar Law's story. That's why Doflamingo is so obsessed with Law, because he sees the anger, the hatred in his eyes, and that's why he decides to bring him into their organization. The entire backstory with Doflamingo was also handled really well, just finally being introduced to his family, and just the weirdness of his father wanting to leave and be with normal humans, and then it just suddenly went all wrong so quickly, and then they were constantly forced to run away, his mother died, Rocinante had some sort of weird freaky experience, I'm guessing when they were being tortured, that caused him to be silent, although this is probably part of another plan. Clearly by the end of this episode, Rocinante has shown his true colors, and clearly he's doing something behind the scenes, and I'm sure that's going to piss off Big Brother, but we're just going to have to wait and see. All the stuff with Law and his reveal of his name was also a really big deal. That's another character we can add to the list of the Will of D. These characters are always really awesome, influential, and are the ones that shake up the One Piece universe. So that's a really big deal for that character, and it's also going to draw both him and Luffy a little bit more closer. Otherwise, this episode was handled really well on the technical side of things. The animation, in particular the scenes at the beginning when Doflamingo and his family were being tortured, were done really well. They were really atmospheric and scary, but you were also sort of like not sure who to root for. It's a really interesting thing, you know? You feel sorry for Doflamingo's family, but then you feel sorry for the people who are just like pouring their heart out about all of the awful things the Celestial Dragons have done to them. That whole scene was really freaking effective. The thing with Trafalgar Law and his introduction, the montage scenes, it was all handled really well. All these backstories are going by really, really quick, and I can't wait to see how they're going to handle them in the next couple episodes. It's also worth noting that the last couple of episodes have been pretty good in terms of production value, so let's hope they keep that up. Otherwise, I thought this was a pretty fantastic episode of One Piece with some crucial information that any One Piece fan should definitely check out. So I'm going to give this week's episode a 4 out of 5. Pretty freaking solid. A few slow moments in some of the animation and artwork was a little iffy. Otherwise, this was a pretty important episode that any One Piece fan should definitely check out, especially if you're following only the anime version. But even if you read the manga, check out this episode. You might see something you like. So I like this episode a lot, but what about you guys? Please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of One Piece in the comments section below. Did you guys have a favorite scene from this week's episode? Did you get the feels during Doflamingo's backstory? What did you think about the reveal of Trafalgar Law actually being a D? Is the Will of D going to be really important in this arc? What do you guys hope to see from the rest of Dressrosa? And what do you want to see from the rest of the One Piece anime series? Please tell me in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching my review. Make sure to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel, and follow us on social media. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby.